Today, we're going to talk about a man who 1,000 years ago solved a problem that's so fundamental, we're literally still living inside his solution. It's a problem most of us have never even noticed, but it shapes almost every single thing we read. Think about the last time you read a really well-designed book or a document. It probably felt orderly, balanced. You might even say calm. This quote right here gets to the heart of the mystery. We feel this order, but we almost never stop to ask where it comes from. So, let's ask that question right now. Why does a well-made page feel that way? The answer isn't just about pretty design. It's about a hidden system, a set of invisible laws. And the story of those laws, well, it starts with one guy. Okay, part 1, the unseen order. We're heading back to 10th century Baghdad, where our protagonist saw a kind of chaos hiding in plain sight, and he decided he had to fix it. So, picture this. You're in 10th century Baghdad. This place is the center of the world, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. And this whole city, this whole empire, is built on the written word. We're talking laws, knowledge, contracts, official decrees. Everything that made the government work was on paper. Ink was the lifeblood of the whole operation.
But there was this huge underlying problem. Even though these documents were incredibly important, the writing itself was just all over the place. I mean, every scribe had a different style, right? And their mood, how tired they were, their whole personality, it all ended up on the page. The authority of a legal document could literally be weakened by sloppy handwriting. Clarity, order, beauty, it was all just a matter of luck.
Which brings us to part 2, a problem of trust. See, this wasn't just about making things look nice. At its core, this was a crisis of government. And the person who saw this most clearly wasn't some calligrapher sitting in a workshop. Nope. His name was Ibn Muqla, and he was a vizier, a top government official. He was dealing with the documents that decided who owned what, who was innocent, who was guilty. So he saw this chaos not as an artist, but as a man whose job was to keep the state from falling apart.
And this right here, this lays out the central conflict perfectly. On one side, you have the reality of handwriting. It's all based on temperament, mood, chance, personality, total disorder. But on the other side, you have what the state needs: authority, order, justice, trust, clarity. Ibn Muqla realized these two sides were in a constant fight. The very tool they were using for governance was actually undermining it.
And this was his big, critical realization. The laws of the land, the contracts that held society together, the very word of the caliph, all of it was just too important to be left to the random whim of some guy's handwriting. He knew something fundamental had to change. So now we get to part 3, the search for law. Ibn Muqla starts this quest, right? But he's not looking for a better scribe or a fancier style. He was looking for something way, way deeper. He got it. He understood the problem wasn't a lack of talent. The problem was a lack of a system. He needed to find a law for writing itself, a set of rules that could control the shape of every letter, no matter whose hand was holding the pen.
So where'd he look? He looked completely outside the world of calligraphy. He turned to the things that defined order in his world: measure, proportion, and geometry. He started studying Euclid, not just as a math textbook, but as a philosophy. He saw geometry as a kind of visible truth, a reflection of a perfect, divine order. And he started asking himself, hey, if the entire universe is governed by these beautiful mathematical rules, why isn't writing?
Part 4, the dot changes everything. Okay, this intellectual journey leads him to this massive breakthrough, an idea that is just so simple, but its impact is absolutely profound. And it all started with the smallest possible mark you could make on a page. The dot. That's it. A single diamond-shaped press of the reed pen. Now here's his moment of pure genius. He realized this little mark wasn't just a speck of ink. It was the fundamental unit of measure, the atom of writing, the smallest piece from which everything else could be perfectly constructed. And from that one single insight, he built this entire elegant system. First, the dot is the basic unit. Simple enough. Second, the height of the first letter of the alphabet, the alif, is defined as a precise number of dots high. Third, every other letter is then designed based on its geometric relationship to that perfect aleph. And get this, even the spaces between the letters were measured in dots. All of a sudden, writing wasn't a spontaneous gesture anymore. It was a precise mathematical construction. So part 5, writing becomes infrastructure. The impact of this system was, well, it was a revolution. It took writing from being this personal, unpredictable art form and turned it into something totally new, something reliable, something scalable, something essential. And this right here, this is the core idea of this whole story. What Ibn Muqla created wasn't just another pretty font. It was infrastructure, like a road or a bridge or an aqueduct. It was a system built to serve everyone, working reliably in the background, holding everything else up.
And the consequences were huge. Because of his system, writing became fair. Two different people could now write with the exact same dignity and authority, no matter their natural talent. It became teachable, because now there were rules, not just gut feeling. And of course, it became scalable across the entire empire.
Now, Ibn Muqla's own life, it ended tragically. He fell out of political favor, and as a punishment, they cut off his right hand. But the story goes, he just attached a pen to his arm and kept writing perfectly. And this wasn't just some dramatic gesture. It was the ultimate proof of his philosophy. The system he built was bigger than any one person. It was even bigger than himself.
Okay, part 6, a blueprint for creation. So what's the takeaway from this 1,000-year-old story? Well, it turns out Ibn Muqla's journey gives us a timeless blueprint for anyone who's trying to build something that's meant to last.
Let's break down his process. First, he totally mastered writing before he ever tried to change it. Then he brought in a completely different field, geometry, to give it structure. He focused on a huge problem, law, order, trust, not just on making things pretty. He found that smallest possible unit, the dot. He then turned his own gut feeling and intuition into a set of rules anyone could learn. And finally, he created a system that could actually survive in the real world, with different people, different tools, and different moods.
And here's how that maps to today. If you want to build something that matters, you follow the same steps. First, get completely fluent in your field. Then, add a second discipline that brings structure, like code or logic or math. Tackle a really deep problem, like trust or clarity. Find your version of the dot. Maybe it's the pixel, or the token, or the video frame. And then, and this is the hard part, make rules without putting your ego in them, and be willing to let your creation become so successful that you disappear from it entirely.
You know, in our world today, we are completely obsessed with generation. We want to produce more stuff faster. We want AI tools that can generate endless options. But Ibn Muqla, he wasn't interested in any of that. He wasn't asking what he could generate.
He asked a much harder and much more powerful question. What must be true? What are the first principles, the non-negotiable laws that have to govern this thing? It's a question that chooses necessity over novelty and discipline over raw inspiration. And it's the reason that 1,000 years later, when you look at a page, you can still feel the calm.